One.
You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is June 14th, 2022, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing today?
Spencer, hello. Happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you.
And yes, I'm doing well. Man, we got I had a lot of stuff going on in game this week, but we got a very quiet week of news.
I know.
That may portend that we're not far away from a not quiet week of news. Maybe not this week, but probably soon, I would think.
Yep. Yeah, they're getting all their announcements out of the way over at the Games Fest, the Summer Games Fest that's happening right now. So there's lots of Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 and other exciting titles getting their content shipped out the door when it comes to all the announcements. And so I think once that lull has come after that, so maybe not next week, but maybe the week after, we'll start getting some more 925 Season 4 hype stuff going on, I would imagine. And
we got to get Dragonflight Alpha up on a server somewhere before too long.
Oh, I think it's up on a server somewhere. I think we are waiting for that public view. The public ones, yes. Let's get the content creators, let's get the friends and family, let's get all those folks in there to start looking at it. I think is going to be the exciting part for sure. So they did get a few more chances to go over some of the talent tree stuff inside some blogs, and that was kind of neat to check out. But in general, we're, a bit of a light news week. But Jason, before we dive too much into World of Warcraft, is there anything ABK-wise we want to mention?
Yeah, there is one little piece of news I wanted to bring up because earlier this week, was it yesterday? Time is real stretchy for me these days, but very recently, Microsoft announced that they have entered a labor neutrality agreement, and they're pledging to respect Activision Blizzard employees' right to unionize. Of course, they've pledged that they will work with CWA and the Game Workers Alliance, the Raven QA union, and everything like that. So this is good news, but I also feel like it's kind of fluffy because, first of all, the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard has not gone down yet. It hasn't been approved yet. It is not set in stone by any means, and I think that in a lot of ways, this kind of announcement from Microsoft is kind of proactive, like, yeah, we promise to not care and we'll work with whatever unions exist. I think it's basically PR to say to, anybody who might try to put the kibosh on this deal that, like, no, actually we'll play nice, we promise. Also, at least in the US, like employees' right to unionize is protected by law. Like, they have to recognize a union that's been formed by NLRB standards. It's not like they have a choice, right? Now they can, maybe not negotiate in the best of faith. They can drag negotiations out around contracts and stuff like that, but it's not really up to them whether or not they get to decide that. So it's good news, I guess, assuming that the deal goes through and that by this time next year, Microsoft is the corporate steward at Blizzard, if that all goes according to the plan of these two companies and their boards and their investors, then okay. I mean, that should be a pretty favorable environment for employees to organize and to get what they need, on the job. So hopefully we see that come to pass, but a lot of big caveats here for me because this is, Microsoft does not own Activision Blizzard right now, so they can say whatever they want to about what they're going to do with their employees in the future. But,
right.
Until the shoe actually drops, it's worth keeping an eye on. It's better than them saying, like, no, actually, we think that the Game Workers Alliance is ridiculous and we're not going to recognize or negotiate with it. It's better than that, but, I think it's more or less PR fluff until we actually see something happen. But I think it's worth noting.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is it's nice to know that Microsoft is throwing their support behind it, I guess is what really the biggest thing to me is. And it comes at a really poignant time with all of the Microsoft announcements happening again around Summer Games Fest, that they are being vocal about this as well, because it's such a hype time for the industry. There's a lot of eyes on it, so it's nice to have statements like this happening too. We'll just have to wait and see how that deal shakes out, I guess, and then what it ends up looking like 2 years or 3 years or 4 years after they've taken over, because that's when you'll actually start to see some sort of influence happening. So yeah, all right. With that, this past week in World of Warcraft, I didn't get up to too much inside WoW. It was pretty much raiding, and outside of raiding, I'm just sort of doing my Covenant Shuffle. Like I'm in my end of quote unquote end of expansion loop is the way I would sort of put it at the moment. Of hey, yep, let's just get on and do the few things that I feel motivated to do, and otherwise I'm checking out other titles or checking out other stuff. Just staying up to date on the news and announcements that are coming out around Summer Games Fest, and then around World of Warcraft in the community. There's still a lot of conversation, discussion around balance. There was the AWC stuff happening this past weekend, and a lot of that was still just Rogue Mage Priest in like such a massively dominant way that now there's a lot of calls to like, how are you okay just leaving these three classes in the state that they are when it comes to PvP? They are massively dominant. They are the only thing we're seeing really show up at tournaments, and the only thing we're seeing win at tournaments. Why can't we, get something balance-wise done about this class combination that they do? And those sort of balances can come in a lot of different forms, but I think adding something like sap sharing with sheep or stun sharing with sheep or something like that to sort of make their CC chains less viable would be something that'd be interesting to see. There's Priest in general is just such a powerhouse of a healer inside PvP that I feel like there's some addressing they could do there. It's difficult to... I'm not buried enough deep into the scene like a lot of these competitive players are to really come up with solid solutions on my own, but I know that there's a lot of good ideas floating around the community about what they could do. So hopefully, since the devs have been listening to a lot of players, they'll listen to these competitive players and we'll start to see some variety come back into PvP, because it's kind of sad at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's always tough, at the top end of any kind of competitive thing in a game. Like, there's just always going to be right answers, I feel like. So it is, that's a tough call because it doesn't affect many players' experience. But then again, it is glaring, at the top level.
Well, it's been the prime combo for decades. Like Rogue Mage Priest, Rogue Mage, those combinations have been one of the best combinations of classes for decades. So
yeah, it's at a certain point, like the core of the mode in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. At a certain point, I think that they could probably take a hard look at breaking that combo to allow another combo to be king for a period of time. I think that would be fine. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anything ever does happen with that. How was your past week in WoW?
It was actually pretty busy, and it was sort of like a week of endings. I met a crossroads, I think, after this past week. Yep. We did get Heroic Jailer down on Sunday, 48 pulls total, which is, I think historically for like an AOTC boss, that's about average for us. That's like right in there. So not like a really punishingly difficult boss by the time we really committed to progging on it. But I think it's a pretty fun fight. It was one of our cleanest ahead of the curve kills I can remember. Almost everybody was alive when the boss died. So that was awesome. And the key was really just having super clean phase ones, just doing the dance properly on phase one, people going where we've kind of predetermined that they need to go for things, and keeping everybody alive in phase one means a ton of uptime in phase two, means the boss's health is already pretty low by the time you get into phase three. And then with phase three, it's like, okay, the biggest things to know are, don't go too far away to drop off your ads. Try to just, fan out and collapse and then all out on the ads. And, obviously Defile, try to bait it out and move away from it. But, there's a pretty big tell where Defile's going to go when he does his animation. So that stuff didn't take us that long. The healing absorb was pretty gentle. I mean, they've nerfed it quite a bit. So like the rune in phase three, we learned pretty quickly to just kind of deal with. So yeah, overall, I mean, that was great. I think our raid trajectory might change kind of significantly after this. I don't think we're going to like push through like 3 or 4 mythic bosses or, I don't even know if we'll be doing full re-clears anytime soon. Like, I think people are kind of ready to just have summertime, and I'll take whoever's around to do whatever. And if that means we get weekly jailer kills throughout the rest of season 3, awesome. If not, like, I'm really not going to sweat it at this point, because I think it's just not worth it to me emotionally. Like, I will bring whoever shows up to do whatever we feel like makes the most sense to do, but we kind of have no more real goals with raiding, I don't think. Speaking of which, with Mythic Plus, I got up to 3011 Mythic Plus rating, so I got my tyrannical Plaguefall 15 off the board. I had another like mid-teens tyrannical score in there somewhere that the Keystone's lined up for. So, got Keystone Hero, got my 278 conduits. Congrats. I really have nothing, no more real goals via the Mythic Plus system either at that point. You know, like, I'd like to keep 20s rolling just to keep playing at a decently high level, stay sharp, and get high keys the following week. But you know, the big stuff is really done there. Me and my hunter buddy were the last two of our like main crew that was pushing for it, that needed 3K. So I don't think anybody else is really even close. So it's not like we now need to shift to helping somebody else with specific keys. So we'll just do whatever is like the lowest friction, probably.
Yeah. Speaking of which, did you get to do any cross-faction stuff this past week?
Not much. I had one of our regulars has faction transferred to Horde because he wanted to play Troll. So that's it though. I got one person who faction changed their main to Horde, and I haven't had anybody like zooming in from I don't have any like friends that main Horde or anything that we've been waiting to play together. So. It's been pretty non-existent. It's been business as usual for me, except I have to like invite this one guy that would normally get auto invites off of BNet. That's about it.
Did they stay on server, or did they swap servers too?
I think he went to the other server that we're connected to. Bilgun and Doomhammer are connected together. I think he went to that server because we have like a small guild full of guild Horde alts on that server. So I think he went over there. So still on the server group.
Yeah, that's the big conversation right now is, do Alliance guilds and conversely do Horde guilds need to start up a Alliance or Horde counterpart guild so that, at least they can still have some guild identity when they're overdoing their Horde side things. And so there's been a lot of conversation about that I've found inside the community and around our team as well, with people who want to go over Horde, and whether or not, there's someone starting up the Horde side guild that's going to, and who's going to run that and how that's going to work, and etc. So it's a bit strange at the moment, and I think it just emphasizes hey, wouldn't it be nice if there was cross-faction guilds? If you're going to do cross-faction, why not just do cross-faction?
Yeah, and I think in this weird little space we're in right now, it's probably worth it to set up guild structures like that, just so the people that want to play like the off faction of whatever their guild runs can at least sort of hang out and have that sort of connection to something, because the community is like, I don't know, like it works, but it's just really not it's not the same kind of integration into the game as the guild structure is. It's not a one-to-one replacement. So hopefully they can break up the guild structure for 10.0 or at some point during Dragonflight. I mean, I understand that this is a lot of work on the back end and making things actually work the way we expect them to, but yeah, it's kind of not ideal the way it works right now, but at least it mostly functions. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll see once we spin up more, like maybe we'll see if we get any Horde recruits or anything, but we have a lot to consider as we move forward with, what server structure ultimately looks like for us, and if a transfer is in the cards or something. But I haven't had anybody come knocking. Like, I mean, my server group is so dead. It's not like I have like a lot of players who are looking for raiding guild homes. It's not like I have Horde players on server who are going, hey, I want to run with you all. You got any spots now that we can cross faction? That hasn't happened yet. So, but I mean, that's a symptom of playing on a dead server. There's not a lot of people raiding to begin with.
Yeah, it's the most interesting thing is when you are trying to fill out your raid team for the week. And let's say you wanted to run a normal run for the week, and you were like, oh, well, we only could find 8 people, and you post that inside of the group finder. You can then have cross faction people applying to your group, which is actually something that I found interesting for filling out raids. So I am excited to hear some stories from some listeners if they've been doing it or taking part in those sorts of activities, because I think that's probably where it's most beneficial to teams is, hey, we want to raid, we don't have enough people, let's post ourselves in the group finder. And then it used to be, especially for Alliance, quite difficult to sort of put together a group that way. Whereas now, it's a flooded market. So speaking of flooded market, the cross-faction stuff I did this past week was Mythic Plus. I did a lot of group finder-based Mythic Plus. And one of my pastimes was whenever I went to actually do keys, the first thing I do is just go through the list and report every single advertisement that was in there. And the new reporting system is live. And the new reporting system is more of a pain in the butt than the old reporting system, which is unfortunate. I was very disappointed that it basically went from like a 1-click to a 3-click kind of thing. It used to be you could just right-click on an advertisement and then go down and flag it as an advertisement, and it would be removed from your list and you wouldn't see it anymore. Now you right-click on it and you go to report, and it brings up a report menu, in which case you then have to choose which option it is, whether you're reporting them for the name of either the group or the person who's created the group, or you're reporting it for some sort of communication. And then once you've chosen communication, you have to choose which kind of communication, and you choose advertisement, and then you submit, and then you get a pop-up window that says thank you, which you then also have to close. And so now for every single time I report, as opposed to just right-click advertisement, right-click advertisement, right-click advertisement that I was doing, it's like 4 additional steps that involve closing windows that pop up on my screen. So I would kind of like the shortcut back for advertisement if they could do it. I think it's great to have a more robust reporting system, especially one that, says thank you when you report someone. But when it comes to reporting advertisement, I would love it if they made it as easy as possible for people, because it is certainly something that discouraged me from reporting groups because it took too much time to do. It was too many steps to do it. If you're going from something that was quick and easy and took me a quarter of a second to report a group to something that takes me 5 to 10 seconds to report a group, that is a substantial increase in commitment to me reporting groups versus just being like, ugh, this is such a pain in the butt to report, I'm just going to skip over it. So if anyone's listening over there on the UI team, please get in there and add a shortcut for reporting advertisement, because it's probably the thing you're going to get reported the most, I would imagine, of anything else. So make it quick and easy so that I can just do it super fast and move on. Because I want them filtered out and I want them banned and removed from my lists of dungeons when I'm trying to find my dungeon groups. But I do not want to be in a situation where I just feel like it's too much of a slog to do, because that makes me sad. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for advertising, it should be kind of one and done, right? Yeah. You don't really need a lot of context there. I have received some new types of advertising spam in game via the calendar. Have you been invited to any calendar event sales? That was new for me this past week or two. That's awesome. They're always finding ways to try to drum up business. It's so obnoxious.
Those popped up in 9.2 for us, and then they sort of died off. When sales community sort of went away, they went to that for a period of time, and now the biggest thing on my server is impersonating other guilds, which we've talked about before, which still happens, where there's just random people impersonating other guilds to con people out of gold is just like the most common thing that we see. That's still ongoing. It hasn't been addressed yet. But like I said, I'm happy to see the more robust reporting system come in. I think that's great. I expect to log in and see a bunch of mail inside of my mailbox from Blizzard signifying they took action against things. That would be great to see. But I also want it to be quick and easy. So they need to sort of find a balance between offering you the opportunity to explain more or go into more detail or provide more evidence, while also just acknowledging that some things like advertising should be a very quick one and done report. So yeah, hopefully that happens.
It's been so long since they've modernized the reporting system. So yeah, I mean, hopefully this is just the beginning.
Yeah, it's just a step in the right direction.
It need to be done, but yeah, they need to keep, focusing on these features and improving this stuff for players, because they let it stagnate over the years, and it's gotten the way it is, and we don't want it to be that way.
Yeah. All right, with that, let's jump into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. Okay, this is the Cataclysm Timewalking week. The Sign of the Destroyer buff is up, which means Cataclysm reputation gains from combat and quests is increased by 50%, and characters level 50 and above can access time-walking versions of 6 Cataclysm dungeons: End Time, Blackrock Caverns, Lost City of Tolvir, the Stone Core, Vortex Pinnacle, and Throne of Tides. Completing 5 of these, they don't have to be 5 different ones, just completing 5 time-walking dungeons grants you a normal Sepulchre loot cache. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to grab it. And this also means that one of the greatest raids of WoW's history, Firelands, is back. Basically, you can talk to Vormu in Orgrimmar or Stormwind to access with a group of 10 to 30 players to the Timewalking Firelands dungeon that drops 252 item level gear. And I say one of the greatest raids because it's one of the raids that really highlighted a lot of very fun boss mechanics. There was no boss mechanics I found inside of this raid that were just extremely irritating and extremely punishing. They had their fun with the attack left leg, right leg, without making the boss break in some way by doing it, which I think is great when they managed to do that. So yeah.
Yeah, Firelands was awesome. I think it was the high point of Cataclysm. Actually, that whole patch was at 4.2. Just the zone around it and everything, like that really paid off Cataclysm's potential in a way that I don't think 4.3 did as much. So, if you need to change your pace, if you want to play WoW with your friends, but you're like, Sepulchre doesn't sound like the thing we want to do this week. I mean, Timewalking Firelands is out there. It is equivalent to normal in terms of item level. So, that's not bad. I mean, these dungeons are pretty good. These are mostly pretty quick runs. I feel like they did get rid of my beloved Grim Batol with 915, but Blackrock Caverns is a cool dungeon, so I guess it's not too bad. I would have preferred to say goodbye to End Time in this rotation, but it's still there, and people are still going to die because they don't know what to do. But the only thing about time walking is that, man, it's really not worth it for gear. It's barely worth it for leveling either. So you're pretty much just trying to blast through 5 of them for that normal raid loot. The other benefits are pretty minor in my opinion.
The big thing to remember is that the time walking gear can get it can't. The time walking gear can't. My brain is very focused on Legion time walking at the moment because I've been going through logs and looking at other resto druids and what they're doing, and some resto druids managed to get a trinket that dropped from a dungeon during Legion time walking that is broken when you push it up to 272. And so I was like, oh yeah, you can totally just upgrade gear. I'm like, wait, no, you can't. Can't do that with these. It's only
there are
with
no Cataclysm Keystones yet.
None yet. But yeah.
So I don't do it for gear.
Yeah.
If you need to just change up your leveling path, then like it's okay. It's not great XP, but there are quick runs. If you have like a low gear max level character, especially if you got a couple friends to run with, it's worth blasting through to try to get that normal cache and see if you can rip something cool. Even if you get something that's not that cool, you might be able to catalyze it. So yeah, like on that level, it's pretty good. But if you're not in that spot, then I don't think it's really worth doing this at this point.
Yeah. It's I will just continue to anxiously wait for Legion time walking to roll around again, so I can try and get my hands on that trinket. That'll be my mission over that week of time walking when it's out. The last time I was out, my mission was to get a particular neck, which you couldn't get that stat combination in the weights that you wanted inside Shadowlands, so that was my goal. And now this trinket is proving to be fairly broken, so I'm like, all right, I gotta go get this trinket now next time. So that'll be my goal in the next one. But we'll talk about that when Legion time walking rolls around again. For now, when you log in, you want to go to Orgrimmar or Stormwind and turn on your war mode so you can pick up a new deal quest inside of Oribos, which you can grab outside of war mode too, but you want to just pick it up and have war mode on so that when you head in to do your patterns within Patterns quest in Zareth Mortis, you can then just complete your new deal quest at the same time passively. And a new deal is worth 35% towards Patterns within Patterns, and the world boss in there is worth 20%. So yeah, it's Valinor is also worth killing. That gives you 55%, and the world quests there give you another 30, and then you're just 15% away. And if you just kill a few rares and open a few chests, you will have your Patterns within Patterns done in a short period of time. So certainly be sure that you are checking that all off the list. Once you finish a new deal, obviously you can turn in the quest and turn off war mode. You can just turn it off right away, because once the quest is completed, you can turn it in regardless of whether war mode's on. So just find a little safe zone and turn it off, and then finish off the rest of Patterns within Patterns if you wanted. But yeah, it's a great way to complete that quest quickly. All right, Torghast. Unbridled Darkness event. Jason, what is this Torghast event that's going on right now?
Yes, this is one of our, 3 monthly Torghast events. This is the one where On your first anima orb, one of your choices will be Vial of Unbridled Darkness or Flask of Unbridled Darkness. The Unbridled Darkness buff, or effect, I guess I should say. It's a kiss curse, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
When Unbridled Darkness is active, it removes your vision, but you receive 75% extra damage and 30% extra movement speed. So this is probably something you don't want to do by yourself.
Yeah.
Because you won't be able to see what you're doing.
Bring a friend.
And
yep.
Yeah, no matter how much damage you're doing and how fast you're going, it doesn't really matter if you can't get anywhere or fight anything. But yeah, this could be really fun to try to do with a friend and maybe try to give them some voice cues or something, try to steer them around Torghast and get through there. This is probably the wackiest. I think the other holidays are more just kind of straightforward bonuses that just change up your play around a particular gimmick. This one is way out there. So it is available all week if you want to check it out. And of course, you can do any Torghast wing now. All the wings are open all the time. So if there's a particular one you want to do for some reason, you need to get legendary memory or you just need souls or something. Especially if you play with a buddy, like Unbridled Darkness might spice it up a little bit, make it a little bit less tedious.
I'm just curious how, because I've never tried it but I've never tried Unbridled Darkness inside of one of the Torghast wings that involves having to use grappling hooks to get around. I'm really curious how that interaction is, man. Like, I really, because someone could say, okay, we need to grapple to the next spot. You're in the right spot. And you're just like, what? You're moving your cursor around your screen trying to find where the cog ends up appearing? Like, what's the,
You're pixel hunting like you're playing Monkey Island or something?
Yeah, like whatever it is. I'd be curious because I've never tried that. Maybe if I get bored this week or something, I'll just head in to just see what happens in situations like that. I would hope that they highlight them. I would hope that you can't see the ground, but that you still have like the glow effect around the thing you're supposed to click on, so you can at least find it. That'd be my hope. Although that might be hoping for a bit much, so you never know. All right. The dungeon quests for the week are The Other Side and Halls of Atonement. So be sure you're picking those up before you go and run those dungeons. And then your PvP quests are Rated Battlegrounds and Epic Battlegrounds. So if you're going to run some Battlegrounds, be sure you're picking those up first too. World Boss, obviously, Valinor, Light of the Eons, dropping yourself some gear out in Bastion, and this is primarily you do for Anima, but also some memories. Jason, which memories is Valinor dropping for us?
Yeah, Valinor's got your Archbishop Benedictus for priests, your Final Verdict for paladins, and your Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence for shamans. So if you have one of those three classes and you don't have all your memories, don't forget to do Valinor this week.
Yeah. If you're looking to pick up some more Anima, you can head out and kill more Geth, the Tormentor of the Damned, in Desmond. And of course, Antros is the boss that's worth that extra 20% inside Zereth Mortis, as well as dropping some 259 level gear. If that's some gear that you might want for an alt or maybe for your main, depending on where you're at, might be able to get some nice 259s out of that you can even turn into tier pieces, which is kind of cool. All right, Mythic plus affixes: Fortified, Inspiring, and Grievous. So non-boss enemies have more health and inflict more damage. Some non-boss enemies have an inspiring presence that strengthens their allies, making them uninterruptible or CCable as long as they are in proximity to the inspiring ad. And players suffer increasing damage over time until healed above 90%. That's Grievous, and that sort of just, it stacks. It stacks up to 4 times. Direct healing removes the stack, and if you heal someone above 90%, it removes all of the stacks. So it gets rid of the bleed, which is really nice. Overall, as far as a fortified week goes, this isn't great because inspiring fortified kind of sucks, and grievous fortified also kind of sucks. This isn't the easiest fortified week. It's also not, in my opinion, the most punishing fortified week, but it's gonna hurt. Like, inspiring mobs can't be interrupted. Well, when mobs are affected by inspiring, they can't be interrupted, which means if there's a mob that's going to do a big AoE effect, you can't stop it from doing its Shadow Bolt Volley or whatever it is it's going to do. And then that's all going to apply Grievous to your entire group. And it's going to hit harder because it's coming from trash. So those fortified mobs. So the only upside to this week is that bosses will be easy because it's not tyrannical. That's really the big upside. Outside of that, this is going to be a bit of a rough trash week. Really sort of leaning on your healers. This is a very intense healing week. It's also leaning on your DPS to either focus that inspiring mob down or CC it and have your tank pull all the other mobs away from it so they all lose the inspiring presence aura. If that's something you can be done, those are both working tricks. I would just say that in general, this is just like an ugly healing week if you're going to be healing this, because if you can help out your healers with, even flash heals on yourself or any kind of direct healing on yourself to remove Grievous stacks, they will be thanking you for it, because they're pretty much everyone's going to have Grievous all the time. With Fortified and AoE damage, they can't be interrupted. So just keep that in mind throughout the week. It also means that is your big friend, because is going to be healing everyone up out of the Grievous chunk of damage that they're taking. So just keep in mind that Relic is actually a very good defensive when it comes to, hey, we're going to do a pull. This pull is fairly large or has this mob that does this large AoE damage. Let's kill right away so that we can get that healing regen on our characters as fast as possible to essentially make us not have to deal with Grievous during this pull.
Yeah, don't forget that it gives your healer mana back too.
Oh, so, that's another big one, yeah.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, this week is not great because even Grievous is going to impact boss fights, right? Like, yes, they're not tyrannical bosses, but bosses that have like AoE effects or things that hit random players or whatever, if they get hit hard enough, they're going to be into Grievous from getting hit, right? Yeah. So, this is a little bit of a nastier week, and you need to pay attention to inspiring. Like, you have to, or you will be punished. And there are situations like, man, I feel like I talk about this dungeon every single week as like the outlier when there's a weird overlap or combo, but Mists of Tyrannosaith, right? There are those mobs in there that cast those massive AoE heals. And if they are not the inspiring mob, you cannot stop them from doing that when the inspiring mob is alive. So you are going to save yourself way more time by hard CCing the inspiring mob, pulling the stuff out, into the previous room in the maze, killing it there, and then moving on to the CC'd mob, than trying to power through it, making a miscalculation, and now you're just not doing damage to anything. Like, all that time, damage, cooldowns you spent was just healed back. That's going to tank your key worse than not having like super optimal AoE uptime. So you just have to respect it. I think as long as you respect it, it's okay. Like, yes, this week is going to tax your healer a bit more for sure, but at least Grievous has more counterplay these days since, direct heals do remove those stacks. It didn't always used to work that way. You used to just have to bail somebody out, which wasn't always possible. So at least that's a plus. I mean, there were, I can remember times before they changed Grievous to be that way where I would be in high Grievous stacks and I would die out of combat because I was taking so much damage that my healer just didn't have the raw power to heal my massive health pool back up, right? Like at the end of BFA. So, yeah, and we don't have good, we do have some of the heal over time food, but it's not as good as it used to be. It's not like old school fighter chow where it's just like everybody just eat fighter chow and, Grievous won't be that big of a deal once we're out of combat. You just have to pay attention to it. That's the big thing with both of these this week. Like, you can't just ignore them or just try to power through them and hope for the best. Like, you have to respect them and understand what's happening around you. Definitely not the easiest fort combo we see. But I think it's still, I think the dungeon tuning is so good. I've said this before. Like, I think the dungeon tuning, especially, they just did another huge round, which we'll talk about later on. But, dungeon tuning is pretty solid for the most part, and so I feel like the affixes are really like the vector where your gameplay is changing up more from week to week. It's not, there's not these like really difficult dungeon outliers that you need to avoid. It's more like, how well can you manage this affix, and they give us the tools to do it. So, use CCs, use direct heals, use like self heals on yourself that you normally wouldn't if you got a couple Grievous stacks. Just do what the game asks you to do, and you can definitely succeed this week, but it's not going to be the most fun week for blasting through keys.
Yeah, it's not going to be the best week for smacking down your fortified rating if that's what you're looking to get done. All right, PvP Brawl for the week is Packed House. That is basically your arenas, except with 15 people on either side, as opposed to your regular 2 or 3 people on either side is normally what you see. They're just throwing 15 in there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting week for brawls. It is basically the silliest brawl that we see. It's also some of the fastest brawls we see, and one of the easiest ways to earn honor. So if that's something you're looking to do, I would certainly get in and run a whole bunch of packed houses, because that seems to be the best way to grind honor for the week, if that's something you're wanting to do. Okay. We are going to move into a blue post. And Jason, this one is particularly about Wrath Classic and Realms, and what's happening with Realms for Wrath Classic. Do you want to dig a little bit into this for us?
Yeah, so I believe this came through yesterday, and kind of an interesting announcement here, and I think it's probably... I don't know. It might be a good idea. It's really weird on the heels of the thing we talked about last week with the Burning Crusade realm consolidation, but it was announced that one of the things they're going to be doing with Wrath of the Lich King Classic is going to be fresh start realms. So there's going to be new realms that are going to open for players to play alongside other players of, just starting out on a new realm. No pre-existing economy, no pre-existing like guild structures, nobody starting at high level. I'm going to read some of what Kyvax Randy says here. In addition to fulfilling a request we've heard from players for a long time, we expect there to be a lot of new classic players joining us for the first time in Wrath of the Lich King, and some of them may be concerned that they'll feel behind. Fresh Start Realms should give those players a chance to feel as though they're on an even playing field with everyone else, which I think that reasoning makes sense. I do think Wrath is kind of the thing that a lot of people have been waiting for to dive into. It was really a high point for the game. It was sort of the last chapter of sort of the original trilogy of World of Warcraft, right? It was the end of this big story that had been being told since Warcraft 3. And it was just a bit of a more modern take on a lot of the ideas that Vanilla WoW had brought across. So I don't think they're off base with this. He outlines a couple things that, like, what does a fresh start realm mean? They will be Wrath of the Lich King Classic realms from day one, so they'll be on 3.x data of some type. I haven't seen like what data Wrath Classic is going to use, but I'd imagine it'll be probably the final build. So you'll have all of your talent trees as they existed in 3.0 or in 3.x. Everybody starts at level 1. You won't be able to boost a character on Fresh Start Realms for at least 90 days. I presume it'll end up being longer than that, but they're coming out of the gate saying it'll be at least 90 days so you can use boosts. You won't be able to transfer to a Fresh Start Realm for at least 90 days. And again, at least potentially doing a lot of work there. Might be longer than that. And Death Knights cannot be created on these realms until you hit level 55. You hit level 55 character on the same realm, then you can make a Death Knight just like it worked in Wrath originally. So I think that sort of, I saw some people saw the headline and were like, yeah, but then you could just transfer whatever. Like, no, these realms are going to be walled off from character services and stuff. Like, the whole point here is that everybody's playing together from level 1 in Wrath data and content. All WoW Classic and Burning Crusade dungeons and zones will be unlocked and available in these realms, and Northrend will be locked until Wrath actually comes out, obviously. Because, I mean, he says this is going to come in the pre-patch. You assume the pre-patch is going to be, well, I would assume it would be at least a month, but they did a little bit less than that for Burning Crusade. So, it might be a couple weeks, might be a month, might be longer. Now, Randy also threw in a reminder here of some stuff that's going to be changing or happening as they make preparations for Wrath Classic to essentially replace Burning Crusade on Classic Realms. The PvE to PvP transfer restrictions will be removed. The Wrath Classic closed beta test will open up. The Classic era clone service is going to be retired. The existing realms are going to be consolidated. And then the new Fresh Start Realms with the Wrath Classic pre-patch will come in, and then Wrath of the Lich King Classic will launch. So, these are just this is kind of like a timeline of stuff that's going to happen. I guess the biggest things to pay attention to here are the Classic era clone service being retired and the existing realms being consolidated. If that impacts you in any way, you probably want to get out in front of that. And to wrap it up, Randy says, ultimately, we hope to see players spread out onto all the available realms as Wrath of the Lich King Classic approaches. For players looking for a chance at faction balance, we're hopeful that by starting fresh, we'll have a chance to stay balanced for a long time. For players looking for a chance to level up in dungeons, we hope the presence of other leveling players makes that more likely. I
enjoy how much they use the term we hope throughout this, because really what it comes down to is we're doing this with this intention. Is that what all the players are going to sort of like follow and go with? Not necessarily. People tend to go where either X popular streamer is or all their friends went or whatever it was. And that's how you end up with servers that have a massive population on one faction versus the other. When it's like, hey, you know, this large content creator is going to make a horde guild on this server, and tons of people flock to join that horde guild, and no large content creator is making an alliance guild on that server, so then the alliance get massively outweighted inside that situation. So I appreciate their hope for things, but we will have to see how it all plays out.
Ultimately, it's all up to player discretion and behavior, right? All they can do is kind of set up the tools, and then it's up to players to decide how they get used. So, I mean, I guess this is cool. I can't really say that this makes me more likely to feel like I'm going to spend time in Wrath Classic. I think it makes sense to offer some of these, but also, like, if I'm going to play Wrath Classic, it's going to be with my existing Classic character. I am not going to start over from level 1, even though, obviously, like, Wrath is a lot more playable and is much more similar to the modern combat game than, like, Vanilla WoW was, or even TBC. And the leveling is more streamlined than, you know, original Classic WoW was, for example. It's not as big of a hurdle. It's still a lot of gameplay before you get into Wrath content. So, I mean, there could be something cool here for players that really want that experience. I'm just not sure, though. I'm not sure how big the audience for something like this ultimately is. I think it's worth having a couple of these per region, but I don't know if people are going to want to flock to these realms and just start from scratch. Like, in a way that's sort of the promise of Classic, right? At least it originally was when Classic Vanilla came out a couple years ago, but I don't know. I feel like if I was really invested in the Classic side of things, that I would not be eager to jump to a fresh realm where everybody's level 1, nobody has any gold, no gold exists, etc. I'd rather just play the character that I've been working on. And I guess for brand new players, it's a lot less intimidating, and it could be a cool thing if, you know, maybe a group of friends have been sitting on the sidelines for the last 3 years going, yeah, it's not time yet, but when Wrath comes out, we're doing it. Then I guess that would be the play. But I don't know. I don't have a good feel for, like, how big of an audience this is serving. It's a cool experiment, and maybe it's ultimately a failed one, and maybe it's ultimately a smash hit. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it's tricky because, to your same point of not necessarily wanting to start over in this situation, the thing I guess I sort of want to bring to the light again is the sort of like non-supported, non-Blizzard Wrath servers, because I know people who still play on these non-supported, non-Blizzard Wrath servers. I have friends who that is their preferred form of World of Warcraft, and that's what they play. And these servers offer character services like, hey, you can buy a set of tier gear if you want. They will generate it for you and mail it to you if you spend money to do these things. They will power level characters for you, like just insta level characters for you, because it's all, you know, pirated back end, not actually World of Warcraft, not Blizzard supported stuff. And what I guess what I want to do with this chunk of time that we have here on the show, just for, you know, 5 minutes or so, is just remind everyone that this is not something Blizzard supports. And if you get caught doing it, you are essentially getting caught pirating a game. It's not legal to do. It breaches a lot of policy that you shouldn't be doing. So don't do it if you can avoid doing it. It's something that if you get caught for, you're going to be in trouble. So I guess part of what I also want to address is if people are hesitant to leave their current progress behind and start over again, how's that going to work with these people who've been playing and investing money into their pirated server characters for all this time when Wrath comes out and they can now technically play it legally the way they should be playing it? Are they going to bounce over? Are we going to see these Wrath servers kind of shut down? I know Blizzard still is actively taking action against these servers and trying to shut them down as, you know, as they find them. So I'd be curious. I'd be curious to know whether, you know, some of the players that are out there doing the stuff they shouldn't be doing would actually hop over, because it's essentially what you're talking about. These new fresh start servers is when Wrath launches, it would essentially be a new fresh start for these people who've been playing Wrath for the last X many years on pirated servers. And I know when Classic was first coming out, there was a large portion of what contributed to the team deciding to do WoW Classic was that there was like over 150,000 people playing pirated WoW Classic. It was something ridiculous like that. Like there was clearly a market for it. And that's kind of what inspired it. And to know that there is a very large community playing Wrath Classic on pirated servers when Wrath comes out, I'll be curious to see whether there's a shift with that, or, you know, if Blizzard's just basically is playing whack-a-mole trying to shut these things down as they pop up and drive people to their product so that people don't feel like they're going to, you know, lose out on whatever progress they have by playing on something pirated that could get shut down at any minute.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I would add to that, like, I mean, you know what? If you wanna play pirate/private servers, you know, buyer beware, right? Like, you know what you're getting into. Yeah. You know that Blizzard's not operating it. You know that, you know, your money is not, if you're paying for things like services or whatever, you may not get what you pay for, and nobody's gonna have your back on that. But, you know, if that's what you want to do, you could do it. I would really recommend not like streaming it or like making YouTube videos about it or doing anything like that. Like, if you want to dabble in pirate servers and like assume that risk, like, I understand why that's appealing to people and why people want to do that, but also probably be smart about it and don't like get a bullhorn and shout from a mountaintop that you're playing a pirated version of World of Warcraft and expect no consequences.
Yeah.
So, you know, just something to keep in mind. But yeah, I mean, Wrath is sort of, for a lot of people, it's the crown jewel. A lot of people would say it's the best era of WoW. I don't totally agree, although it was really good. I mean, it's certainly one of the high watermarks. So it is a game that has like lived on in, you know, private servers and stuff like that over the years. And I mean, honestly, to me, in a lot of ways, it feels like the end game of doing like quote unquote legacy servers for WoW officially is just getting to Wrath and like operating Wrath basically forever. Seems like kind of the goal of the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it will shift a lot of player behavior, at least for a while. I think it'll definitely be a bigger ripple than like TBC was. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all this ultimately plays out, and, you know, how the fresh start realms do and everything like that. And in some ways, I feel like, you know, Classic, the original launch of Classic was pretty much the biggest noise that this program was ever really going to make in terms of bringing back old expansions, because, you know, we're restarting it. It's the actual beginning one more time. Here you go. And just adding expansions on that just isn't the same thing, even if the expansion is better than the thing it's expanding. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't think having Wrath servers in your BNet launcher is going to turn Wrath into the hottest game in the universe. But I think it'll be a nice value add if you're playing WoW, because Wrath is an old version of the game that you can play casually and still feel like you're getting somewhere.
Well, it's also something that I expect to see. Same thing we had when basically our raid team beat Ashara, is we had a whole bunch of people go, all right, I'm out, I'm going to go play Classic. And I fully expect that we will have, when Wrath servers go live, a lot of people go, all right, I'm out, I'm going to go play Wrath for like 6 months or whatever it is. And maybe that'll be the depending on when Wrath actually launches, that'll be the tie over between content, you know, chunks, is people just disappearing to go play Wrath for a period of time because that's what they're so hyped about. So, you know, I like that there's stuff in the Warcraft universe that continues to interest people, and that there is interest in doing these Classic servers. And like you, they're not like my main thing. They're not sort of where I'm keen or focused or feel like I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time. But I'm glad that there is an audience for it and that people are excited for it. I think that's great. All right, the next thing I wanted to chat about is something that actually Wowhead did a post about recently, and there's nothing official from Blizzard yet as to how this is going to be implemented feature-wise, or whether it's just a switch they decide to toggle on or not. But it's something that's coming up that could be really cool in 9.2.5, later in 9.2.5. Well, actually, I think technically you can do it now through macros. So basically, whenever you want to cast a spell, like Efflorescence or Blizzard or Flame Strike, or when I say, Rain of Fire, you sort of picture a reticle and putting a reticle, which is that green circle somewhere on the ground that the effect takes place in, right? Those are reticle based spells. And so if you are someone who uses these spells often, you might know the frustration of accidentally not dropping it where you wanted to drop it, or trying to place it on a target, but that target's standing underneath a tree. I'm thinking of you, Spires of Ascension, first boss, where you try and drop it and it like goes up on a tree leaf, and suddenly you're blizzarding the sky. You're not actually blizzarding mobs anywhere. It just drops it, on other things. But it's been discovered that you can actually, now that this sort of got toggled on, actually use these reticles to target particular characters. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be you either press the button and then clicked where you wanted the circle to go, or you could cast it at your actual cursor. So you could actually make a macro that was an at cursor and let you actually, wherever your mouse currently was moused over, it would try and place it. And that's often when people would get stuff like up trees or, up pillars or whatever it is, where you didn't want it. But now you can actually have it cast at friendly or enemy targets. So you can have it set to always cast on your tank inside of a Mythic Plus. So if you were doing Mythic Plus all the time and you always wanted Efflorescence, or you always want your AoE spell to drop on your tank, you can actually make a macro that casts it at your tank's location, which I think is pretty cool. And how to actually make this macro is all outlined. All these different macros, the mouse overs and everything is all outlined in the post, and I'll link the post in the show notes for people who want to check it out. But it would be a neat thing to see them integrate better into the actual base UI. I know they had the mouse over sort of stuff get built into the base UI already. It'd be neat to see a reticle cast at target built into the base UI, as opposed to having to create macros for it. But I'm excited about this simply because there's a lot of times where I want to place an Efflorescence and I want to place it near the tanks, but I don't want to spend 3 seconds trying to get my circle there because of line of sight or other things that are happening. And so if I can essentially use an Alt or a Shift or a Control modifier on my Efflorescence button and then just drop it where I want, it just auto casts it on the tank, that is kind of exciting because it means that I can essentially just hit it a few times as I move around and have it drop without having to stop doing other things I'm doing casting wise. So just sort of speeding up that process. Or if I always want to drop something on the boss, you can do it that way too and not worry about having to, drop a reticle or move your mouse over top of the boss before you do it. You can just press a button, it drops it immediately on the boss. So neat overall, functional and utility. Yeah.
I mean, back in Legion, we got some macro logic that supported casting at player or casting at cursor, which I use all the time on various tunes for abilities like Ravager, Spear of Bastion, Heroic Leap, Demon Hunter Sigils, Death and Decay, anything like that. Those are great tools to use, but the at target modifier wasn't available, I guess, until 925. And yeah, this is a great change. You should definitely take advantage of this because it's gonna cut down the amount of time you spend trying to line something up. It cuts down potential for mistakes. Just really, really nice change. It would be great to see it rolled into the UI somehow, like in the keybinds menu or just in like maybe some kind of option toggle or something, so that you don't have to write macros, or players that like don't feel comfortable with that or like can't quite figure that part of the game out don't have to bother, and they can just say, this is how I want the game to play. Like, that would be awesome. I don't really use my mouse too much unless I'm moving, right? If I'm just sitting around in combat, like I don't really touch my mouse for the most part. So a skill that requires me to point at a part of the game world and then target it and click to drop it's a bit disorienting. It's totally not efficient for me and my play style. So, luckily with tanking, it's easy enough to just say, okay, this goes at my feet every time.
Yeah.
But that's not the case with, many other abilities or, any kind of ranged abilities or anything. So this is an awesome change. There's some stuff that I want to change up on my mage and my hunter like right away. And I would recommend that, people take advantage of this. It's just gonna make you play better because it's cutting out avenues that you could fail trying to get your brain to translate what you want to do onto the screen. It just makes it easier to do that. So yeah, definitely hook up some macros for these modifiers that apparently work now.
Yeah, being able to basically click on a mob and have a blizzard cast on target as opposed to cast where your cursor is or cast where you choose to place the circle would be much nicer, especially in Mythic Plus, I can imagine, where you essentially just target in the middle, a mob in the middle of the pack, hit the button, and then you suddenly have Blizzard, casting down on top of that entire group of mobs versus dropping a reticle, which is sort of an extra step, right? It's cutting out those extra steps. When we were doing Halandris in 9.2, one of the things that we did with our bomb carriers is, because it was really tight during that, when the fight was what it was, and you weren't able to drop a particular raid beacon, because those different raid beacons for like Moon and X and Triangle and whatever, we basically assigned one to each team. So the team could always find their partner's bomb. So regardless of what's happening, you'd know that you were Triangle team, and Triangle team, whenever they drop their bomb, would always drop a triangle marker on the ground so they could actually find where their bomb was placed. And ideally, a macro for doing that would read of @player, because you basically, whenever you drop the bomb, when you press your extra action button, you want to @player put down this marker. But @player didn't work. It was still broken. They broke it a couple expansions ago and stopped people from being able to use it. So that just didn't work anymore. But you could place it @mouseover, which meant that you could place it wherever your cursor was, which meant whenever the bomb teams were dropping the bombs, they would essentially have to be sure their cursor was on their character every time so that they dropped the marker where their character was. So this is where things like this kind of kick in and go, oh, hey, if we can target @player again, or @friendly, or @enemy as options, if those are turned back on in 9.2.5, that's huge for making systems like that much more functional and achievable for raid teams. So a lot of exciting things with that. Basically, what I like to see when I see things like this kick back in is just the idea of, oh, they're making the game more accessible to players. And if they find a way to integrate this into, the UI menu of, hey, can I toggle this on and off? Can I set a keybind directly to doing this, as opposed to having to create these slightly more elaborate macros? That would be ideal. The amount of people who basically say, I don't know how macros work. I have no idea what to do. And what people basically say is, oh, just Google a macro for Innervate or for Blizzard or for whatever, and you'll probably find one. And you find like a post from 3 years ago about how to do this. Is sort of what you find, and you copy and paste it, and you don't really understand how it works, but it works, and does the thing you want it to do. So I think any way they can move away from that and move into, let's just actually have a more robust way of customizing spells and customizing UI and keybinds and whatnot, would be a better way to go about it. So yeah, it'd be cool to see. I know for me right now on my Resto Druid, I have basically my whole bar is either between, it's all macros, because I either have a cancel spell queue, which is /CQS as part of a macro, which means if I need a spell to be cast next and I've accidentally been spamming the previous button, it will make sure it doesn't cast the wrong spell next. It will cancel any of my spell queue that I have coming up and put the spell I need as my next spell. I have that inside a lot of my macros. I have mouse overs because I'm healing off of a sort of like player unit frames. So I mouse over targets and cast things like Rejuve and Swift Mend. I also have ones for actually targeting particular targets. I often have a mouse over macro for Moonfire, but I also have a different macro that actually targets a particular boss or a particular enemy and casts it. So I can actually do that. There's just a lot of modifiers that you can sort of put into macros. It'd be nice if their systems were good enough that I didn't have to build macros for every single spell like that. If you could just actually have it, be toggled the way you want, or maybe each individual spell, if you want to, could have settings that you could have it of, I want this as a mouse over, I want this as a, whatever it is. And you could actually do that with your spells inside your spell book. Might be a neat way to do it. I don't know. But if they could look into it, it'd be great, because I love seeing changes like this, where it seems like they're moving in a direction for more player accessibility. And that would be great to see.
Yeah, the macro system in the game is so powerful, right? And they keep improving it over time, but it's also not really obvious to, the average player. Nothing points you at it. Like, yes, it's in your menus, but, I think there's probably a lot of players who struggle with the game mechanically that wouldn't if they could harness that macro power into, their rotation and whatever else they're doing.
Yeah,
it would be cool if there was. I don't know how you would do it. I don't know how you would incorporate it in the UI, but it would be great if there was some way the stuff was baked in a bit more or called out a bit more, to show players how to use it, how to set the stuff up. Maybe have some GUI enabled stuff to help you set up your spells the way that macros work. Like maybe it does the macro for you. You're
templates,
just operating.
put templates into the macro menu. Like, come on, like, let's do that.
Or just like right click something in your spell book and like you get like a fly out and you can set the behavior for like how and where it casts, and it just like it essentially does the macro for you based on your instruction. I mean, stuff like that would be a huge opportunity for this game in terms of accessibility and just helping players really get the most out of it and play their best. Like I don't think it's possible to really play at a high level without using macros for at least some things, because it's just too clunky. Otherwise, you're wasting way too much time and effort to accomplish things that could be macroed together and be, one or two keys.
Yeah. All right. As far as hotfixes go, they did another pass on dungeons and raids, but primarily just dungeons, where they basically went in and went, okay, let's continue to reduce damage. And they gave a few justifications, but I still feel like a lot of these justifications are in relation to the note that we sort of had last week of, hey, we fixed a scaling bug, and now everything does way too much damage, so we're going to nerf it by a whole bunch. I feel like there's still a lot of that happening as well. But yeah, they basically went through and nerfed a bunch of damage that a whole bunch of bosses did, as well as some health reduction. And they went, the following hotfixes, their goal is to address circumstances in Shadowlands dungeons where enemy spells could be cast on nearby melee targets, with their current target moved out of range, sometimes leading to unfair player deaths. And so they basically went through another set of abilities and went, hey, you know what? If the tank moves farther away than a melee DPS, this mob isn't going to just turn and kill the melee DPS.
Right, it's going to follow the tank or whoever's the highest on the threat list, which should be the tank. But yeah.
So there's been a few adjustments that went through with that. So hopefully that means fewer melee deaths. And they did a second batch of updates to dungeons where they addressed enemy abilities that could be cast on nearby targets in melee. We sort of covered that. But also, the following no longer hit nearby targets in melee when enemies' targets is out of range. So they actually went through and went, all right, let's say Dismantler's Destruction, that no longer hits melee. In the other side, Headless Client's Discharge doesn't. In Plaguefall, they went through like 5 different abilities. Sanguine Depths, like 5 more. Tazavesh, the Devoted Accomplice's Energy Slash. These are just things that, would just one-shot melee targets every now and then because the tank happened to move out of melee range. It's nice to see. I mean, basically, it just makes melee life easier, which I don't know if that's necessary, but it's good. It's good for player, happiness, so that's good.
Well, it makes it feel like the mobs are playing by the rules, right? I think that's the big thing, because if the tank is not in range, the tank is not in range for a reason, right? You're either trying to move stuff around and pull it to some LOS spot. You're trying to kite away because of necrotic or something like that. You want the mobs to play ball. The mobs are attacking you. They should be following you around the arena while your team fights it. Like, that's how most of the game works, right? That's how most things you fight behave. Historically, that's how the game has worked. So that's what you expect. I think it's okay to have mobs that don't play by those rules necessarily, right? Like maybe think of maybe the Arbalists in Theater of Pain that just pick random targets and hit them really hard with their crossbow shots, right? Like, fine. That's a different problem you have to solve. But I mean, if you look at the hotfix notes, the amount of mobs that got changed, it's a lot. They changed a lot of abilities throughout, like almost every dungeon in the pool, something got touched up. So obviously they're directing gameplay in that way, right? Like they want it to be viable for a tank to round up a bunch of stuff and then kite it away, and then it follows the tank while the team takes it down. Yeah. So that's good. I like to see that. I wanted to call out a couple of tuning changes specifically too, because one of them was really huge, which was Spires of Ascension. Astronos, Lachesis, and Klotos had their health reduced by 20%.
Yeah.
And their Aura of Intimidation damage was reduced by 20%. These are the 3 mini-boss mobs that are right in front of the last boss. these things can be really punishing, potentially harder than the boss. Like on a fort week, this was the last boss.
Yeah,
so,
the question I have with that, though, in relation is how much did the fix that they put in last week affect their health, right? So is the 20% reduction actually just bring them back in line with where they were before? Or is it actually a nerf, right?
I did Spires last week, and it felt like a nerf. I mean, I don't have math. I don't have statistics in front of me, but I went, that felt like it died 20% faster.
Okay, good.
So, all right. That's really nice to see, because I think those three have they've been a little too beefy this whole expansion.
Yeah.
And the other one I wanted to call out specifically was Grand Proctor Borrelia, which is the third boss in Sanguine Depths. Agonized damage reduced by 20%, and fixed an issue causing some abilities to scale with the fortified affix instead of the tyrannical affix. Like, this boss is already probably one of the scarier dungeon bosses that exists, especially like on a week like this. A
lot of movement, a lot of damage. Yeah.
If this boss's abilities were scaling with fortified this week, where you have Grievous and Fort, like, I don't know how your healer keeps everybody alive, because the AoEs are going to put people into deep Grievous, So nice to see that some of the stuff is getting cleaned up. I mean, I think for the most part, the dungeon pool in this expansion has been the best we've seen in the Keystone era, and that they've done a lot of stuff to keep the dungeons feeling good and feeling tuned well. So some real surgical changes with some of the tuning last week, but I like to see the change with the mob behavior. We want mobs to follow a tank around. That's the whole game in dungeons is sort of based on that, right? Everybody just assumes that 99% of the mobs you fight are going to follow the tank around. So just make them do that.
Yeah. It's super frustrating when a tank is attempting to move a mob or a boss for a particular ability or for a particular reason, and that mob or boss just decides to turn and kill a melee and then move. And you're like, why?
Yeah, right. It's just time to cast an ability, and it had to go on somebody, and the tank wasn't there. So splat.
Yeah. All right. They also fixed an issue with Rygolon, and this is an interesting thing, because they quote unquote fixed an issue, when really, to me, they actually made a mechanic function the way that it should function, which is when a player could incidentally consume 2 collapsing quasar fields that overlap. I feel like from day one, the intention of this ability was when a player consumed a collapsing quasar field, they were immune to consuming a second one. They weren't supposed to be able to. So I'm assuming they've built some sort of cooldown in between once you've soaked one before you can technically soak another, like your character's eligible to do so. Sort of like when you come up from downstairs from Anduin, you're not eligible to get blasphemy. That's the one. I was like, starts with a B. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Bad B thing.
Exactly. You're not eligible to get blasphemy for a period of time. I assume they added something similar to that, but this is how this should have worked from day one. So fixed an issue, I think, is less of a oops, we didn't mean for this to happen, and more of a we actually did mean for this to happen, and we are correcting the mistake that happened on this fight. So good.
Yeah, hard to know for sure, but it's a great change, because man, if somebody accidentally or incidentally consumes 2 collapsing quasar fields that overlap, that could be a wipe, because there might not be another collapsing quasar field that's usable, and then a debuff doesn't get cleared, and then you're not coming back from that. So Rygolon's a cool fight, because it's just high intensity for like a relatively short duration. But we've seen it get cleaned up a lot in the last couple weeks, because it can be really punishing, and collapsing quasar is a big part of that. That timing has to be reasonably precise. They have now given us a lot more leeway, and now this is great. I mean, the fact that one player trying to drop a debuff is not going to accidentally pop more than one field at a time. Because think about it too, like the collapsing quasar fields come from the little quasar ads that Rygolon summons in, right? They all kind of beeline in towards the boss. A lot of them are coming in on the same kind of path. They're taking damage from the same sources and the same relative positions. They're going to die close to each other a lot of the time, right? So you are going to have ones that overlap or nearly overlap a lot. So I'm sure this is an issue that a lot of players have had on this boss up to this point, is like, oh, I didn't mean to eat both of those fields, and now we're dead. Like, just make it so that can't happen, and then everybody can just do the fight.
Yep. And then a bug that they have yet to fix, but I want everyone to be aware of, on Mythical Andrus, if that happens to be a boss you're arriving at, there's currently a bug that is in effect that makes it so you cannot see where the bombs are or where the planet cracker beams are in the last phase. You arrive in the last phase, planet cracker beams start, and they're invisible. And you drop your bomb, and it goes invisible. It's a problem. That's the problem. So yeah, that's
better kill it fast.
That's something you might run into if you're progging on that boss this week. And hopefully they resolve that quickly, because that is not a fun thing when you're putting down a bomb that wipes the raid and no one can see it, and when there's a beam that rotates around that one-shots you and you can't see it. So hopefully they jump on that and fix it up real soon. It's been in effect apparently since Friday, so we will have to wait and see if they got to it. It's been a few days. It would certainly sort of crush some weekend Raiders progression, so unfortunate to see something like that in effect. All right, next, I want to move into a letter, if we can, from one of our listeners. This one came in a while back in relation to a post that actually had gone out on Twitter, and some people had reacted to it. But this one comes in from Nell on Area 52 and says, what do you guys think of Blizzard still running a private Discord for content creators and influencers? I'll read the whole thing. With the emergence of the Community Council, one would have thought that a lot of this communication would have become public and things like this shut down, and yet they live on and are starting to leak again. I doubt the two things have to do with each other due to massive differences in levels of the company, but it very much strikes me in the same vein of Bobby wanting to buy out media outlets to control the narrative, give content creators a leg up on news from the general populace, and they are more likely to treat you favorably in their content. It's practically free positive publicity. Just curious what your thoughts are. Okay, and again, thank you, and references Lore, who used to work at Blizz, recognizing that we have a relationship with Josh and like Josh, and so this, making sure we aren't upsetting the apple cart, basically, by commenting on this. And I don't think we are in any way. It's not a big super secret that Blizzard communicates with content creators to try and set up publicity for upcoming announcements. You need to be able to, in any situation, quote unquote, call a press conference when you have an announcement to make, and make sure people actually show up to that press conference. And in order to do that, typically you have to book people's time ahead of that announcement happening. That doesn't mean that anyone knows what the announcement is. The majority of time, we've had interactions with the Blizzard CM team. Those interactions have revolved around, would you have time on X day to talk about an upcoming announcement? And you're like, okay, we don't know what it is, but we know that there's time that we want to set aside, and that there's going to be some sort of interview or conversation happening with someone. And then typically very close to the day, they sort of nail down who that person's going to be, and maybe what the broad strokes of that topic could be about. The times where we've booked interviews, where we've actually booked like, hey, 9.2.5 is out. This is just me. This isn't actually happening. I'm now hypothetical. 9.2.5 is out. Season 4 is starting soon. We want to sit down and chat with X developer about Season 4 and what Season 4 is going to look like, and whatever it is. That's something I would love to do. That's coming up, and I sort of request that out to their team, and they try and find someone, and we try and work something out. And so we actually know what it's going to be about, because we've sort of set our intention of what we want to talk about, and they've agreed to the narrative that we are trying to get across, and they feel like it'd be beneficial for them and beneficial for us, and it's a good situation. So in general, I think it's important to have maybe a private Discord, but at least a private line of communication of some sort with content creators to be able to make sure that we are setting aside time for their announcement, because it benefits both us and them. Do I feel like the Community Council is where this sort of conversation stuff should happen? I think, and this comes down to, I don't think Nell has access to any of the creator Discord stuff. The conversation that happens in there the majority of time, I can say this without leaking or spoiling anything, is feedback. That's the majority of stuff that happens. Hey, I'm currently rating X boss. X boss does this mechanic that I think is broken or isn't working properly, or X class's ability stopped working. My legendary isn't working anymore. A great one was a recent one of, hey, Pandemic isn't working currently on classes. That was like a week and a bit ago, where basically when you cast a Resto Druid spell on top of, like when I cast a Rejuve on top of a Rejuve, it doesn't actually extend the duration of Rejuve. That wasn't happening anymore. It wasn't working as far as Pandemic goes. That was something that came up both on Twitter, but then also there was a conversation and links and whatnot inside of a creator Discord associated Like that kind of stuff to me is not something where it's like, hey, this needs to be a big community council post. So I would say that the biggest thing that a community council addresses is, hey, this is a direct line to the developers, right? The private Discord for content creators is a direct line to essentially the CM team, the community management team, who then cipher and go through this huge amount of information that hundreds of content creators are dumping and go, these are the pieces we want to take to devs. So I feel like Community Council is great because it's a direct line for a particular group of the player base to talk to developers. And the other one is very media and press focused and is very much a, hey, when something is appropriate to be taken to the devs, decided by the community management team, it's taken to the devs. And I appreciate all the work that the community managers do. I know they just had to actually bring in 2 new people to sort of replace Josh in his role. So hopefully that goes really well and smooth, and wish them both luck in their role taking over that position. And I'm looking forward to working with them both. But when it comes to, do I feel like they still should have a, content creator Discord and influencer Discord kind of thing? Yeah, because I think they need to be able to plan out their media releases. And I think it's smart to include content creators in that as opposed to just going to PC Gamer and all these sorts of places and doing interviews with deadlines for when they can get released. It's nice when a podcast like ours can get a dev, or, when Sloot or Towley or whoever it is gets a dev on and they can have a conversation, or Max, right, can get a dev on and have a conversation. I think leaks is kind of the important thing I want to address as well, because it's really important that information that is posted inside a private Discord like that to content creators and influencers is privileged information, in the sense that it's something where they can feel confident going, we want to make an announcement on X date. So, we're looking for people who might be interested in participating in an announcement on X date, and not have that explode all over the internet, the Blizzard's doing an announcement on X date. Because that then puts Blizzard in an awkward position of, they can't back out of that. It's now public. It's now everywhere, right? If something happens that changes when that announcement's going to be, telling just the content creators who are trying to organize time for it is much less impactful than having the entire community have to get disappointed that something didn't happen, right? It allows them to it allows Blizzard to share information towards planning announcements without basically putting themselves in a situation where they absolutely have to deliver, or they're disappointing a huge part of their audience, right? It separates that aspect out of it. So I think it's important that they have the flexibility to do that. There have been times, I'm just going to say it, there have been times where they have said they're going to do something inside the content creator Discord, and then due to other circumstances or things that have changed, they've had to rearrange or change the timing of those things. That's happened before. I can't give you specifics, but that's happened before. And it is what it is. That's the nature of the industry. But had they done that publicly, there would have been much more backlash and much more reaction and much more questions and much more, et cetera, that had happened, versus just going, hey guys, we just have to reschedule this. You're like, oh, okay, sure. That's fine. We'll just, change some stuff up. So I think it's important that they feel safe sharing things with us. So leaks are bad. And I think it's important that there's a distinction between the stuff that happens in Community Council and the stuff that happens in the content creator Discord. I don't think them going, hey, we have an announcement coming up at some point, is something that needs to go on Community Council Discord. Community Council Discord should be, not Discord, Community Council Forum should be set aside as, hey, this is for you asking your questions to a developer about aspects of the game. It shouldn't be about, hey, this is us workshopping when we're going to do an announcement publicly on the forums, right? They're just different avenues of communication with different people and different departments.
And they serve different purposes, I think, too. I mean, this email came in, I don't know, at the end of last year, I want to say. It's been a while.
Yeah. After there was a large leak. There was a large leak that had happened. Yeah.
Somebody had screenshotted something that Laura had posted about trading rules for tier pieces or something, which wasn't included. It was a day that a whole bunch of blue text came out, a bunch of blog posts from various devs came out about how set pieces were going to work in 9.2 and all that. And, somebody in the Discord had asked for some clarification, which at the time Lure had provided, but it wasn't included in the public-facing posts. But Lure's job is not to publish those posts. That's not what he did there, right? Like what he did there was he dealt with people like us primarily. And, it's just that was one of those situations where some lines get kind of crossed, and like that info did come out pretty shortly thereafter, like officially, but
in a properly produced post for public facing stuff. Like there has to be a particular amount of acceptance of a communication that happens inside that Discord is the off the cuff, hey, I think this might be the answer, let me get some confirmation, kind of like that kind of communication. And then, okay, we've gotten the confirmation, we've gotten the details we need, we're crafting a post, we've released a post. That's what generally happens. So to just
screenshotting a conversation like that out of there and like posting it on Twitter, it just means that you get banned from the Discord, and you're not going to have that channel. Like, we have been doing this for a long time, and we did it for a long time before there was something like the Discord that they operate now for people who do what we do or things like it, right? And those were bad times. If we needed something from the community team, it was very hard to get eyeballs on it. And actually, I believe Josh is the one who had the idea to start that Discord and to invite people to it and to build that community. And now, if we need giveaways for episode 500, or we want to participate in a BlizzCon line style event to do press, or
a charity event, or whatever it is,
we have an easy channel to get that in front of the community team's eyeballs, at least have a conversation about it, right? And I mean, we love to do, participate in any kind of giveaways or whatever that we can get involved in. And we have like an anniversary show, or there's some event coming up with the game, like, in years past, it was sort of just like fire off emails and hope. But now there's an actual way to do that, to request, like, okay, what do we need? We want beta keys for this, or we want the, BlizzCon line virtual tickets, or we need this many. Here's the relevant numbers. Please send them here, and we'll distribute them. And this is how we're going to do it. And then, it's easier for us to request. It's easier for the company to fulfill, and then it's better for our audience because it's you get cool giveaways and stuff in a way easier method than what we had available before they set this up. And that's really like the purpose of that Discord, and like also for creators to get the chance to have a forum to get to know each other and stuff, I guess. But it really, like, it doesn't serve anywhere near the same purpose as the community council does. And it's unfortunate when people participate in like a private community like that in bad faith, or do something stupid like post a private conversation somewhere it doesn't belong. But also keep in mind that different people are responsible for different pieces of messaging, communication, etc. around World of Warcraft. Like, the team is huge. Everybody's got different parts of the job. I mean, I think like in the particular case that Nell's referencing from back in like November, December, that information should have been in the original post from Jump Street, but also like it was not some like earth-shattering thing that had to be run to a public forum about out of a private conversation the instant that it happened, right? That's just like, hey, look at my tweet, look at my channels. It was information that wasn't going to come into play for months until the patch came out still. And it was information that was well known before then anyway. So that whole thing was, I mean, I remember that weekend, that was like such a hot topic because I think it's reasonable that people would be like, oh, well, why do they operate like this private thing for these, for content creators, for streamers, whatever? Like, that's so messed up. Like they cater to these people too much. But maybe there's some truth to that. But really, it's about having like official channels for requests and to keep track of like what people are doing and what they need, because we do need stuff from Blizzard sometimes, or at least we want it. Right. And we want it because it makes the show better, and we want it because we want to do something for our listeners. And we didn't have those tools before they started this Discord a couple years ago. And it's not, I mean, it's really not like the devs and the community team hang out in there all day and chat everybody up. And that's really not how it kind of plays out. But it's nice to be able to click a button and like open a ticket for community and say, I need this. And then know that like somebody's going to at least look at it eventually and respond to you in some way. Whereas in the past, it was like, well, I sent my third email this week. I hope somebody looks at it.
Yeah. It very much, because to be clear, like we didn't have like a red phone that we could call Josh on and go, we need such and such immediately. Like that. It's not any situation like that. It is a ticketing system with Discord, and before, as Jason described, it was emails. Like in Josh and the predecessors to Josh's job that we had to interact with, it has always been a slew of emails to try and like get their attention, keep it on their plate. Like, consider what someone inside that job position gets from, like, how many WoW content creators are there, right? And if every single WoW content creator sends one ticket every 4 days, how many tickets are you attempting to filter through, right? And you're like, okay, like, this is a lot of content. Even if it's like a third of them sent one ticket every week, it would be a ton of traffic to try and actually cover. So yeah, getting something in front of the person it needs to get in front of and actually keeping their attention was a big challenge. And at least the ticketing system now with this Discord allows people to actually go, hey, here is something that I want to request. And they can go, all right, well, this isn't resolved yet. So, maybe I'll try and address this and then get it resolved. And then they can actually keep track of it, as opposed to having an inbox that they're trying to sort hundreds of emails in, multiple times a day. And while trying to do their other, the rest of their job, which is also, fairly demanding. So yeah, it's something I appreciate.
I don't think I could see how it could seem maybe nefarious from the outside looking in, especially like with the particular event that prompted Nell to write this email. But like in practice, it's really just a practical and streamlined solution for what, community dev does in terms of content creators. And I think a lot of the stuff that we've been able to do in the last year and a half with the show, at least, wouldn't have been possible without having that kind of that touchstone with the community team, doing like the BlizzCon line interviews we did last year, doing the big interview with Morgan we did this year, doing giveaways and stuff. Like it's all just so streamlined. And that's really, I think, the company's main purpose in maintaining it. And like, yeah, it is not the same thing as a community council, which is way more sort of like player driven, like trying to get stuff in front of the development team. The purpose of the Discord is more for content creators to reach out to community dev and get what they need. Yes, gameplay feedback makes its way through, of course. That's always part of community's job, but around here, we're not in the business of TSZ, right? Like, we have other concerns, but we do still take a professional approach to doing the show. And we want to provide, cool perks to our listeners, and we want to provide good content and exclusive content when we can get it. Of course we do. But there are a lot of content creators who it is their profession, and they need, it's literally like a lifeline to the company for them to be able to function and maintain their business. Like, if they not having a relationship with the company means that their business's ceiling is much lower, right? So that's, I don't know. Everybody is entitled to think whatever they want about them operating an invite-only Discord for content creators, but in my experience, it is not some nefarious thing that is like some cool secret clubhouse. It is relatively perfunctory, and it's there for when we need to request something from community and know that we can get it in front of the right eyeballs and hopefully get some kind of timely response.
And I want to reiterate something you said earlier, which is, it is not a spot where devs or whatever hang out all day long and chat. There's zero devs inside of that Discord. There are no developers who are in that Discord. There is also there's only, I think, not even all members of the community team are in there, but there's only one or two who are responsible for actually looking at tickets and responding to tickets. So the majority of the time you're interacting with one or two people, and it's about particular requests or actions that you're requesting. And it's not like, hey, yeah, let's hang out and chat. Otherwise, like, it's just content creators having conversations every now and then about feedback on the game or things they feel about the game. And usually it's 99% content creators talking to content creators. that's really all it is. So
yeah, pretty much
not a whole lot else.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen from the community council, like the community council is just like way better for
substantially better.
What we're looking for in terms of like direct feedback to development team. Like that is what that is for. It would be great if we could get more of it, but like obviously dev time is valuable, especially when it's trying to spin up probably a expansion alpha and kind of get the ball rolling on that. Probably why we haven't seen a lot of posts of late, but like I'm sure those floodgates are going to open as Dragonflight gets closer. And like, I think that's proven to be really a valuable tool for having these sort of curated discussions between players and devs. Like, that's really what that is for. That's why they have started building it up. And I mean, I think we've gotten a lot of great resources out of that forum so far, and a lot better than anything you're going to find in the Discord. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. All right. With that, we're going to play a quick sounder for our patrons, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Celian, Infark, Kapawi, Mibble the Mighty, Nick, and Shorel. Thank you. This sounder is for you. Our Patreon's located over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. If you want to jump in and support our Patreon, we would really appreciate it. It helps pay for all of our hosting costs, as well as some of the special stuff that we do around the community. We have no new patrons this week, but we will be hosting our June event later this month. I will add that the episode that we typically record on Tuesday, the 28th of June, is going to happen on the 27th, for those who are curious. We'll probably do the patron event the Friday before that, I imagine, but we'll have to discuss it and see what works out best for Jason and I's schedule. But yeah, I have my 10-year wedding anniversary is coming up on June 28th. So I don't want to have stuff all booked in on that day, which could potentially interfere with that. So we'll probably record that episode on the Monday and have it all released for you ahead of the Tuesday. So you'll get an early episode that week. But outside of that, big thank you to all of our patrons. We really appreciate all the support you do for our show. It means a lot to us, and it allows us to, keep making fun product for you. So, yay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all the support over the years. And, looking forward to the June call-in show, which will be, probably, next Friday, probably? Yeah, that seems about right. We're running out of June rapidly here somehow. Yeah. But, we'll get something on the calendar.
It's going to be the fall before you know it.
Yeah, really, man. It's amazing how that happens. But yeah, thanks for all the support over the years, and we'll get some details out probably next week about the June June patron show, and we'll talk to you then.
Yeah. All right. If you folks have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider heading on over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. They really help out our show, boosting us up those charts, and we love reading them from our listeners. We don't have a 5-star to read this week, but if you guys submit one, we'll get it on the show for you. So please do leave us those 5 stars on your iTunes and Apple Podcast. It's fantastic when you give us the opportunity to raise up those charts. It means a lot. All right. That wraps up episode 524 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. You can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Twitter, or you can join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/Discord. And enjoy that. That'd be a pretty good time getting in there and chatting with y'all. So please do join our Discord when you get a chance. All right, Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
And best place to find me, as always, over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. Always talking whenever I'm getting into around WoW and other stuff. And you find me streaming WoW over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald. I don't know if I'm going to stream this week. I didn't stream last week. I haven't been feeling great. I don't know. We'll see. Probably no streams this week either, but we'll get back after it soon.
Yeah, well, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. I've been streaming Raid Monday to Thursday every single week. So if you were wanting to check any of that out, it's all there in my VODs, as well as you're able to tune in live if you want. I'll be streaming tonight, 7:30. Feel free to hop on and have a look. That's Eastern time. All right. With that, for Jason and myself, thanks for listening, and job's done.